Hey everyone, it's Chris.
It's Allison.
And it's Matt.
And before we get going on this episode of the Quantum Leap podcast, guys, I don't know if you know this. We record these things pretty far in advance sometimes. So sometimes real world stuff can outstrip what we talk about in the podcast. And you might notice when you listen to this podcast that's coming up, we make no mention of the fact that the Quantum Leap pilot, that we've been talking about quite a bit, was just picked up to go to series. So
it's not a pilot anymore. How exciting.
Big congrats to everyone involved.
Yeah.
Right?
Such good news. Well done, guys.
Mr. Raymond Lee, Deborah, everybody involved. We can't wait to see what happens. So we thought we'd get out ahead of it. We're probably going to do another reboot special when a little bit more comes to light than saying, hey, it went to series, woohoo. But in the meantime, we want to let you know that we're aware of it. And this, it presages a lot for the future, because now it's a guarantee that we are going to be going weekly for at least 13 to 26 weeks. They're saying that this is going to be picked up on NBC, not just Peacock.
Yeah.
Because they have so few pilots this season. So it looks like it's going to the mothership, as they say. And I don't know if that necessarily means 26 episodes, but it could. And us going weekly, it's got me, guys, I'm a little scared. And I'll tell you why. It's going to be a lot of work. And we are looking forward to it. I mean, I look at it this way. How could it be any better? We are once again poised on the brink of relevancy, but that means that we're going to have to put the product out there. We got to put it out. So if you are not supporting us on Patreon, I hate to turn this into a plug, but I have to. Go on over there. I have put a stretch goal up on our Patreon page at patreon.com/quantumleappodcast. And it's so that we can get enough patron support to hire an editor. I think it will be extremely important for us to maintain the quality of the show and to keep to that advanced release schedule that is looming in our future. What problems to have? Oh my God, what a great problem to have. But at the same time, it would give me and Allison and Matt and Albie and everybody else on the crew a lot of peace of mind to know that we can afford to get some help in to pinch hit so that we can give you the best possible show on time every week, talking about it in real time as the new Quantum Leap airs. I can't believe I'm saying the new Quantum Leap is going to be airing.
That's mad. This is amazing.
Yeah. So if you are currently a patron, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for all that you're doing to help support us. If you are not a patron but are interested, you can look at patreon.com/quantumleappodcast. We have all of our patron levels there. Listen, any support that you want to give us is appreciated. But for the $5 level, you will also unlock about 20 hours and counting of bonus content that is only available to Leaper patrons $5 or above. So take a look at that. And I'm just going to be frank. In order to hire an editor, Albie's a professional editor, and he told me what it would cost. We would basically have to triple or quadruple the amount of support that we have right now. So it's a tall order to fill, but I know that we have the fan base to maybe make it happen. And we just thank you for all of your support, all of your listening. We'll be bringing you the podcast regardless. We'll be doing our best, but any help that you can give will go a long way to making sure that we put our best foot forward. And who knows, we could get Raymond on the show. We can get Deborah back on the show. Maybe we can get the showrunners back and Ernie Hudson
Yes.
on the Quantum Leap
God.
podcast.
If we could talk to Ernie Hudson, that would be insane.
We have to get Ernie on to thank Chris for arranging for him to be cast.
Do you guys know how jealous my husband would be if I talked to Ernie Hudson? Your Ghostbusters super
likes
fan.
Ghostbusters, right? Yeah.
See, so if you out there want to make Phelan really, really jealous, now you know what you can do. You can go to patreon.com/quantumleappodcast. Thank you very much for considering it, and on with the show.
Warning. The following podcast contains frank discussion of child abuse and adult themes that some listeners may find disturbing. Listener discretion is advised.
This is Scott Bakula, and you're listening to the Quantum Leap Podcast.
Theorizing that one could time travel within his own lifetime, Dr. Sam Beckett stepped into the Quantum Leap Accelerator and vanished. He he awoke to find himself trapped in the past, facing mirror images that were not his own, and driven by an unknown force to change history for the better. His only guide on this journey is Al, an observer from his own time, who appears in the form of a hologram that only Sam can see and hear. And so Dr. Beckett finds himself leaping from life to life, striving to put right what once went wrong, and hoping each time that his next leap will be the leap home.
You are listening to the Quantum Leap Podcast. This is episode 106, The Wall, by Ashley McConnell.
Welcome to the Quantum Leap Podcast, everyone. I'm Christopher DeFilippis.
I'm Allison Pregler.
And I'm Matt Dale.
And I feel like I sound extra announcery today. I don't know why I'm doing this. Anyway.
We can't tell the difference, Chris. This is how you always sound. It's been like 3 years, man.
You do like old-timey radio style, you know, like, hey, everybody, welcome to the Quantum Leap Podcast. Yeah, use all that journalism experience you got.
I just need like someone playing the trombone with the wow.
I'm sure there's a more suitable episode or novel we could have used this comedy element for than something about child beating in the...
Oh, this might be the only laughing we're doing on this show, so let's get it out of the way. Let's get it out of our systems, because we are about to embark on another meeting of the QLP Book Club. Today, we will be discussing Book 3 in the novel series, The Wall, by Ashley McConnell. And as Matt has already alluded to, kind of a heavy read. So why don't we just start with initial impressions? Allison, I know you've been itching to tell me what you think of The Wall.
Do we read the summary first? I don't remember if we read the back of the book before.
Oh, you're right. We're supposed to read the summary.
Look before you leap.
So people know what we're talking about.
Oh, yeah, okay. So maybe I'll edit that, or I won't. It's right there. It says it in big bold letters, read synopsis blurb, and then initial impressions. And I just wasn't even looking at my rundown.
Your own rundown, Chris. This is what happens when you get cocky after all these years. I don't need this. I got this down.
That's me. Cocky Chris. I want a little caca. All right, so here is the synopsis for The Wall. When you're up against the wall, leap before you look. Germany, 1961. A rigid world of dangerous politics and strife. The Berlin Wall is under construction, and Dr. Sam Beckett has leaped into the life of a 6-year-old girl, ... As Missy, he feels small and helpless. What can a child do to alter the fate of Germany and the world? Sam is about to find out when he leaps again into the adult Missy. On the day the wall comes tumbling down, Quantum Leap, The Wall, an all-new adventure, first time in print by Ashley McConnell. Based on the Universal television series Quantum Leap, created by Donald P. Bellisario.
Also published by Box Tree if you're in the UK, Quantum Leap, Too Close for Comfort, Quantum Leap, Carney Knowledge, and The Making of Quantum Leap. Yeah, that's true. I've got both editions in front of me.
That's another summary that's kind of a lie, isn't it?
Oh my god.
Let's pitch something that this really isn't.
What's wrong with that summary? I think it...
I feel like it's emphasizing the Berlin Wall a little more than the importance of it really is.
Yes.
I mean, I know the whole play on meaning here with the wall, but not really what the book's about.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
Yeah, so as we've discussed already, this book really deals with child abuse. And it's really a serious novel. There's not a lot of fun in The Wall. And, I have very definite opinions. Let's put it that way. So, Allison, why don't we get started with your initial impressions?
So, I kind of want to tread carefully when I'm talking about the novels, because it's hard not to make it feel personal, because unlike the TV show, a lot of it is one person's creation. But look, this This novel made me mad. It really made me mad. I hated this book.
Wow.
And it's weird because I didn't remember hating it when I first read it. I read through a bunch of them. I remembered it being heavy. I knew it was going to be a darker subject matter, which, again, I don't have a problem with. We talked about that before. But man, I did not expect to hate this book that much, but I really did.
Wow. Oof, I can't wait to get into, unpacking that a little bit. How about you, Matt?
Yeah, I remember, I think we've spoken about this a bit before, that this is the one novel that I read back in the 90s and didn't read any more until I was researching for the guide a few years back, precisely because it was a little on the heavier side, and I thought, okay, so that's what this range is. This range is just all heavy stuff. I definitely do not hate this book, though, so I'm interested to get into that discussion. But it's not a light or fun read.
Yeah, it's funny, Allison. I have kind of the opposite reaction. And Matt, my initial impression when I first read this book, I admit that I did seriously dislike it. I don't know if I'd go so far as to saying that I hated it, but I didn't think that it was the best example of what we should be doing in a Quantum Leap novel. That was me then, but damn, I don't want to say enjoyed because it wasn't but I was really sucked in by this novel this time. I thought it was a good book, and I understand it's thorny and it's very depressing in many, many scenes. It's not a light read, but it feels like this is Ashley's third book. It feels like a book that Ashley wanted to write. She wasn't just writing a, quote, quantum leap book. And I felt like Carney Knowledge and Too Close for Comfort sort of just felt like exercises in the premise. This one felt like it was close to Ashley, like she was expressing something, I don't know about personal, but something that she really cared about. And I think it came across in the writing. It's intangible. There are things that I still have problems with, but I did not expect to be sucked into the book like I was. And I really thought that it was terrific.
This is always this paradox with tie-in fiction, though, isn't it? That you're playing in someone else's sandbox. Do you go for something that is like the TV show in tone and style and content, or do you find a story that you've always wanted to get published and never been able to, and just shove the characters in to make it work? And
is that what you thought of this?
Yeah, absolutely. And Chris, it's exactly what you just said. You just said it more politely, but that was. I felt this was. I don't know Ashley or where this may have come from, but I felt this was a novel that had been sitting in her mind for years, and suddenly here's an opportunity to tell this story. And yeah, I didn't feel like this was Quantum Leap first and a story about child abuse second. It was definitely the other way around.
Wow, Matt, because you took something out of what I said that I didn't mean. Like, I didn't think that this story existed independently.
I think he was just saying it was personal.
Yeah, I just think that she had more of a personal connection to the subject matter in this book for whatever reason. And I think that she turned it to good advantage in making the book more absorbing than her first two.
No, fair enough. I just felt it was tonally such a shift from not only the first two, but from Quantum Leap as we know it. And that was, again, I remember thinking this back in the 90s when I was reading it, just thinking, well, this is actually quite a good book, but I want Quantum Leap. And this isn't really Quantum Leap. So I'm just going to not read the rest of the novels. You know, I might check out some other stuff by this Ashley woman, but not specifically QL, because obviously they're doing something totally different with the range.
No, I mean, I feel like it didn't feel very Quantum Leapy to me either, mostly because I just felt it was so dry about it. Yeah. Here's the Sam and Al don't feel like Sam and Al to me. If you're going to do this story about abuse, like, I want to know what these characters are feeling. I want to know what's going on in their minds. And it just doesn't go there. Like, Sam is beaten severely through this whole thing. He's beaten into a concussion. And the whole thing with the wall, the family's not acknowledging what's happening. He's got to tear down this metaphorical wall, this cycle of abuse through Missy's life. But you don't get what is Sam feeling in this moment. He is being beaten by this woman? What does Al feel about Sam being beaten at this moment? At one point back at the project, Al's hanging out with Verbena and she's like, hey, is Sam feeling more stressed than usual in the sleep? And he says, no, he was beaten into a concussion. What are you talking about? No. Obviously there's something going on here. And I just want to know, especially because Sam is in the body of a little girl. He's helpless in the sleep. And yet so much of this is just uncomfortable dinners and being sent to his room over and over and over again. I got so sick of reading the same scene over and over and over again. He leaves the house maybe once or twice. And in between that, we get boring military guidebook descriptions. I could not care less about any of that stuff. And then all of it, they keep cutting back to the project. All of this stuff about what's going on there. And there's stuff about Verbena and Missy and what she thinks of the situation. And then Al is just sort of sitting there eating sandwiches in the cafeteria like, I'm not relating to this situation. It's like, why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't he relate to a situation where there was a brother and a sister who was traveling around with an absent father and a bad childhood and a mother who was terrible? Like, all of these things that were just such missed opportunities. I had so many thoughts about this
is the perfect opportunity for an Al knows everything moment, isn't it? It's like, this is my childhood.
Yeah, it's just like, if you're gonna go there emotionally, go there emotionally. But I just felt nothing about what was going on.
I was the opposite because, and Matt, you're right, this is not like typical Quantum Leap, but I think it is within the milieu of Quantum Leap. I think what I admired most about it is that it went for more of the visceral reality. This is not perfunctory TV stuff. This is like hardcore violence. This is more akin to like watching Raped than watching most of Quantum Leap. I know that Raped is an outlier for the series because it is so serious. This is an outlier for the novel series because it is so serious. And I think that one of the strengths of Quantum Leap that they didn't play on often enough was just how fucked up the world can be. And sometimes Sam's going to be in a situation where it's not just fun TV time. I mean, if he's really got to change people's lives, this, I think, is more akin to the kind of stuff that he might be exposed to in, say, like a real world instead of like a TV world.
Yeah, but like, what does Sam feel about any of this? Like, a lot of the time it's just him in his room. Like, it just feels like, I mean, tell us how fucked up it is. There are times when he's like cowering from this woman, traumatized, and then just seems to just slide out of this as soon as she leaves the room. And like, well, I mean, she's just having a rough time.
Yeah.
Like, no, like,
yeah.
Why is there so much defense of this and not a lot? Like, I think once he's just like, the woman's like fucked up or something. There's something
he says that she's fucking insane. That's the worst part of the book, like the worst beating that he gets that we see. And I even wrote this down. I mean, Sam is altruistic, but I can't forgive his constant excuses about Jean's behavior. And I just found it, like you, Allison, just vexing that he kept on making excuses for this woman.
Yeah. I feel like Sam was more angry about the dad teaching the little girl to salute than about the mom beating her daughter viciously through the whole thing. That's the thing when I get about, like, what does Sam feel about the situation? It just feels like he's very even about a lot of it. Like, in the moment when he's being beaten, of course he's reacting to it, but it just feels like if you're not going to have a lot of action going on in this story, because a lot of it is just waiting around in his room or eating dinner, then you need to get into the heads of these characters. And I don't feel like this story did.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that one scene about the saluting, because that's where the book annoyed me. I mean, what Sam doesn't understand, hyperbole. Al says, oh, you better get in your room, you might be court-martialed. Obviously, he's, making a reference to the situation. And I'm like, court-martial, don't you think that's extreme for a child? It's like, what are you, fucking stupid? Of course I didn't mean he was actually going to court-martial her. It's like,
why is he more angry about the dad than anything else? That confused me.
I don't know. Why doesn't he say anything to Al? The dad comes in. He's more fixated on the fact that he makes the girl salute, but doesn't say a fucking word about the fact that she's got her eyes blackened and swelled shut.
Yeah.
And he doesn't
Get
even
into
comment.
that.
Didn't you notice this? Didn't you notice that they sort of address it at the end of the book?
Yeah. And that's what the whole book's supposed to be about, the wall. And yet it doesn't tell me about the wall.
So many obvious things that they could have done or said. But you're right, Allison. That is one of the significant failings of the book. And I think that it sort of plays into some of the, I hate to say it, but the weaknesses that we've seen in Ashley's writing when it comes specifically to the relationship between Sam and Al. And I've said this before, and it was again in spades in this book. They just don't seem to like each other.
Yeah.
Al goes on and on about how Sam's his best friend and he misses him and I want to see him back in his body and this, that, and the other thing. And when they get together, he just snorks at Sam and Sam just snaps at him. And there is like no helpful, constructive dialogue between the two throughout the entire freaking novel.
Yeah, like when you were saying in the other books, like, oh, Sam and Al are just arguing or like mad at each other all the time. Like, I was like, I don't know. I mean, I don't think it was that bad. In this one, yeah, like Sam's just angry at Al all the time. And then Al just doesn't seem like concerned at all about his friend. Like, even if like emotionally he wouldn't be concerned, like physically, like Sam could get killed in this
real danger
very easily. Yeah. And it just feels like he's written out of the story too. Like so much of the stuff at the project is about Verbena, and then like, Al, you stay out of the room. You stay out of this story, Al. This isn't about you. Don't talk to this kid.
Which is such a shame because there's a moment of connection at the project between Al and Missy before he gets sidelined in favour of Verbena, and there's a few of the books that tackle. Like, and this is mostly stuff we've not got onto yet, but the stuff about Al wishing he was a father and like connecting with kids and stuff, they really pick up on that, and they could have done so much more here. And she starts doing, but then she backs off and makes it all about Missy and Verbena, which does at least give Verbena some good material. Yeah,
it was nice to see a little more from her. Like they mentioned something about Verbena has like a sister named Anisha.
Yeah,
just a little bit about her.
Yeah, and I enjoyed that aspect of it as well because it's the first time I think that we've seen Verbena fleshed out in any way. I think she was mentioned in the first or the second book. You guys have to refresh my memory, but this is as much about Verbena as it is about Sam and Al. She's like the third lead in this. And all the stuff that Ashley gave her, I liked. And the way that Ashley like sort of built her into the project and made her more important in the overall scheme of things. Again, that was another precedent-setting thing for the novel series because when it comes down to it, and I think I've said this in different ways before for the first two books, but this is the project that I was writing about when I was writing Foreknowledge. This was the dynamic that I picked up on and carried forward when I was writing Foreknowledge because I just enjoyed the way that Ashley brought Verbena to life and made her a central part of the mythology. I even like the way that she brings Tina to life, even though Tina's not in this book except for one inexplicable scene where she's doing her toenails for no reason.
Yeah, what's that all about?
I do like she's like, they mentioned like she thought about like seducing Sam when he came back or something, like just something.
Yeah, it was just about her like being horny for Sam.
I don't know why that happened, but it was fun.
It was like, hey, she's also here.
She was contractually obligated to have a line or something.
Yeah, maybe.
All this stuff at the project, I have to get into this. The biggest reason I really didn't like this book, and it wasn't even any of the stuff I've mentioned, like the biggest thing for me is all of the stuff about the mind-body leap and Missy and Sam.
Ooh.
This was all a mind leap.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was all a body swap. So it, like Ashley's been writing it before, Sam is in the body of a 5-year-old girl, and then Missy is in the body of a 30-something-year-old man. This book makes the most compelling argument for why that is a terrible idea.
Yes.
For them to swap bodies.
No, it doesn't. Sorry, go on.
All right. This whole thing they're going on about, is this child abuse to have this girl in this body of this man? And she's like checking out his body. She's playing with his dick in the bathroom. They talk about that.
Yeah.
And then they talk about Sam having to check out her body and deal with that. There's multiple bathroom talks about how they deal with that situation. And this just highlights why this is a bad idea, a really bad idea, because you don't want to get into the mechanics of this. Like, what would a 5-year-old girl think if she was an adult man's body? Like, you do... It's bad. It's really bad. And I don't want to read about this either. I don't want to read about Sam as a little girl having his panties stolen by, like, creepy little boys and shit. Like, it's just not fun reading for me.
Very uncomfortable. I saw this as the elephant in the room, and at least Ashley tackled it head on, because how could you not?
But we don't want that, though. That's the reason you don't get into that.
But the thing is, if you're going to introduce this dynamic, at least shouldn't try to write around it. I'm not saying that I enjoyed those scenes. I'm not saying that you're wrong, Allison. I'm just saying that at least they acknowledged it. They didn't just gloss over it. And I think this is why we don't see Sam, like, leaping into children very often, and he's never leapt into a little girl as far as I remember.
Yeah, but in the show, they the only thing they ever said, like, concretely was that it was his body, so it wouldn't matter if it was a little kid.
Yeah, but this novel could not have worked if it was not a body swap type leap. And yeah, there's bits of it that I didn't like reading about, and she could have written around that, but at least, like the last couple of novels where she's gone into that, it's mostly been offhand and hasn't actually advanced the story forward. This, at least, okay, it's inconsistent with what we know from the TV show, but it's used to good effect a lot of the time. Because you can't have Sam being beaten by some guy unless he's actually in the body of a little girl. So it's necessary, and at least there's that element to it. But yeah, there's bits that she could have just not written.
I didn't want to read about her playing with Sam's dick. I didn't want to read about Verbena talking about drugging her so she won't remember that she's in a man's body, and then, like, gassing her in the in the room and all that. It's sinister. It's sinister and weird.
Those were choices. And they were bad choices. But like I say, if they're going to be inconsistent with the show, at least do it for a reason and not just for a line that you just turn the page and read and say, why couldn't you have just done this right?
The only time it really intrigued me is the very beginning. When Sam leaps in, he thinks he's being, like, attacked by a giant because he's suddenly in this very tiny body. And so there's that, like, physical element of it. He is suddenly, like, a much smaller, weaker person physically, when normally he's used to being able to handle these kinds of situations. So that was kind of interesting, but I feel like past that point, it stopped being as much of an issue as it could have been. They talk about, like, what's it like to be in a little girl's body. He's got to, like, step on a stool to reach something in the bathroom. And of course, when his mom's attacking him. But I just don't feel like it was enough to really justify any of it.
I really don't know how else she would have done it. It's exactly what Matt just said. To instill that sense of danger, because Sam could have just done a flying noodle kick otherwise, and he probably would have. Again, that's, I think, was part of the strength of the book, in the sense that there were no punches pulled. I hate to say that. I don't mean to make a pun, but it did put Sam in real peril, the dynamic that they set up. It just happened to coincide with all of that creepy stuff back in the waiting room. And, you can't have it both ways. If you're going to use that setup to explore the child abuse aspect, you can't just ignore that setup when it comes to the body and the swap of the little girl and what she might be experiencing in the future.
Yeah, I guess there's ways that this could have been addressed if it was still a mind leap thing. Obviously, that's not how Ashley McConnell had been writing the stories, but Sam is still a little girl, so it's not like he can just do a flying noodle kick and then run away and everything's fine. And they're in an American military base in Germany. Like, where's he gonna go? So he has to stay in this situation as Missy. Maybe he could defend himself a little better, but maybe he has to play along with it. Maybe there's some psycho-synergizing going on and he feels this little girl's trauma. There's lots of ways that you can go about this without him having to be in a little girl's body. But if you're going to write a story about him being a little girl's body, maybe just don't talk about those aspects about like them like exploring the new bodies that they're in and like all this other stuff. Like there's things on the show that are problematic that they never went into, because it's like, yeah, you don't want to, if you get into it, it's kind of creepy and gross. But they did through a lot of this book. A lot of the stuff at the project had to do with Verbena deciding whether this was child abuse or whether to drug her or not. I think when they talk about her like playing with Sam's dick in the bathroom, like it's like, and then they got kind of upset about that and made her take some pills or something. It's like, what? No, no.
Can we have an agreement that Allison doesn't use the phrase "playing with Sam's dick" again during this podcast?
She does though. It's the elephant in the room. You can't get around it.
Yeah, no, and I think that the way they sort of hedged on the reaction, she wasn't traumatized. She just seemed more concerned or impressed that she could aim better when she peed.
But you don't want a 5-year-old girl playing with a grown man's dick. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have to put a little warning at the top of this show.
I'm sorry.
Because I ain't bleeping dick 75 times.
I'm sorry. His wee-wee. She
wiener.
plays with his wee-wee.
Oh, that's so much better.
Not good. I did notice, like, okay, when she wakes up in Sam's body in the waiting room, she goes, "Where's my mommy?" And I was just thinking of dreams. Where's my mommy?
I really am so glad that this will never be produced as a TV show, because I can't imagine Scott doing Missy as anything other than that falsetto. And it would just take it. Thank God I could picture Missy in the waiting room instead of Sam speaking like Missy. Because, oh boy, that would have been a rough watch.
I mean, I guess there was some sort of interesting elements in that, imagining this is Sam's body doing all these things a 5-year-old girl would do in the waiting room, like sitting there, like coloring, but like using big man hands, sitting at little kid tables or whatever. Like, there's kind of that was interesting. But again, it's just so much of it is kind of just wrapped up in a lot of things that were hard for me to get over.
Well, to get back to a point that you had made earlier, Matt, about missed opportunities with Al and this mirroring his childhood to a great extent, I think that they did address that towards the end, where Al is in the cafeteria having another sandwich or whatever, and Verbena's talking about Missy's upbringing and, you know, therapy and all that, and Al basically gets into a defensive mode in his head, saying, yeah, and then they're going to talk about this, and they're going to talk about that, and then they're going to analyze me, and no, thank you, I'm fine, thank you very much. I think that what Ashley was able to do here was to show that maybe Al does have some trauma, but he is not willing to face up to it yet.
Yeah, but wouldn't that be great to see that in the rest of the book? Wouldn't that have been great if Sam and Al had talked to each other about that? And Al's like, no, this isn't about me.
Well, they don't talk. Ashley, no. In Ashley's universe, they're not friends. They're barely co-workers.
That's what I'm saying, though. Like, it would have been a great opportunity, especially when they talk about how, like, oh, well, Missy ends up in foster care because her mom kills herself and the dad's traveling. It's like, well, that's Al's situation, isn't it? Mm-hmm. That's exactly Al's situation. Like, there's a wall there, too. But the book has put the wall up. Break the wall down, Ashley. Let's get into this. But there's, like, one paragraph near the end about that. It's like, well, I love that. Can we get into that? And they don't. It's like a paragraph.
Yeah, I wonder if she was up against a time crunch, or maybe she just wasn't thinking like we think. And that's one of the problems I had with the books when I first started reading them, because they didn't capture the show or think about the show the way that I thought about the show. So it's been an experience now, like I said, with decades behind me and not being that uber fan anymore, to reapproach these books and appreciate them on their own merits. And I know you guys don't agree. I just found that this one was more engaging, and I think that there was a lot of problems in Ashley's writing in the first two books. Mainly, there's a lot of stuff in the middle where they don't know what's happening. They're just spinning their wheels. They repeat what Sam needs to do, but he doesn't know how to do it. I think that she really leaned into that in this one, because Sam's mission changes every 5 minutes in this book. First, he's got to, I guess, stop Missy from being beaten. Then he's got to prevent World War III, which made me laugh out loud. But then, you know, all of a sudden they figure out a way to thwart that with Marta, the DP, and Walt, the proto-rapist. And they then go, okay, I haven't leaped yet, so then what else? And it seems like this is where Ashley falls down sometimes, spinning her wheels, but I think she used it to actual good effect here because it was just like kind of messy, kind of sloppy. Like, I don't know what I'm here to do. I'm 6. I can't even get out of this apartment barely. You're telling me I have to prevent World War III? And now you're telling me I have to prevent my mother from committing suicide. I have to prevent this kid from running away and dying in a fire. How am I supposed to do any of this?
World War III, solves itself. Yeah. It solves itself. He just is getting away from the kid who wants to steal his panties, and the kid reports Marta, and that seems to be the big thing that solves itself there. So World War III is just sort of an aside. They talk about it a lot, but the conclusion is okay, I guess that happened. Wouldn't that have been exciting? But it wasn't.
I find that and all those elements tied to that very much padding. This could have been a much slicker, sharper novel if they'd have said, if Ashley had just decided this is about child abuse and we're going to set it in any town America and not try and get into the war stuff and all this other stuff that's just more dark and depressing shit.
I'm going to disagree with you wholeheartedly on that, sir. I loved the World War III stuff. I loved the fact that they gave this leap a broader sense of history, and they explored some of that history. If this had just been small town America, domestic abuse, it would have been very much like Too Close for Comfort, dynamically, because a lot of depressing domesticity in that as well. Mm-hmm. At least this gave the book a bigger sense of scope to me, and they mentioned nuclear family, which is my favorite episode.
I wrote that down because I knew you were going to be like, nuclear family.
We all smiled at that. Chris is going to like at least one page of this.
And one of the things that we don't get in Quantum Leap, which I hope that they can address in the new series, is that Sam lives in a broader world. And we always talk about much more domestic issues on the show. It's nice to see him interacting with history on a deeper level here. He's in Germany. He's in a situation that's unlike any situation he's ever been in. And I liked that change. It wasn't just another suburban crisis that he had to solve.
It's such an interesting setting, and yet I don't feel like a lot was done with it. Oh, this is different. He's in Germany, and he's an American little girl, and all that. It was kind of creepy near the end when they had the sirens going off and he's running around town, but no one's there. He's got to he's got to save the brother from a fire, and he finds him, and they mention trilogy. At one point, he remembers getting caught in the fire. Yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah, he ends up breaking his arm while he's saving him, and then Al had mentioned earlier in the story, Missy broke her arm at some point, and then you almost forget that he broke his arm, because it's oh, damn, he broke his arm anyway, and now he's running around doing this. It's what, wouldn't that hinder him a little bit? What's the point of this? If you're gonna do it, then do it,
I think it was maybe just to add some drama.
Yeah, but it wasn't. What was the drama? He broke his arm and then.
I don't know.
Oh well.
He said, "Ouch!" It slowed him down a little bit.
Yeah, I'm complaining a lot. That's what bothered me about this, though, because these are exciting things and they're written in the most boring way they could have been written, in my opinion.
Wow.
But I don't think Ashley McConnell's a bad writer. Because I liked the other two books fine. Well, the other one had some similar issues. Too Close for Comfort.
Yeah.
It was another abusive family situation where you're kind of just stuck in these situations with these jerks and all right. But I do feel like that one got the characters a little better. You had more of a sense of what people were feeling, and in this one, it just felt very oppressive and not in an interesting way.
I did like the fact, though, that Sam cut through the bullshit when it came to the World War III thing. He's like, how am I going to prevent it? I was like, we don't know. And he said, then it's a non-issue. I'm just going to figure out a way to make Missy's mom stop hitting her. So we did get some nice direction from Sam, even though he really had no options. He had a purpose within himself that he was able to cling to. Another really interesting sort of core of this novel was a lot of the timey-wimey discussions. And again, I touched on this earlier, and the fact that Sam just needed to cling to one mission because his mission kept changing. It was so sloppy. It's just like, you change this, but now this happens. You change this, but now this happens. But now this happens again. Now we got to go back to this. And I think that in a lot of leaps, we get because fiction has its demands, we get a very neat narrative through line with many of the leaps. You change this one thing or these two things, and then, everything is solved, and then you leap. But again, I think in a real world setting, if you change one thing, 3 other bad things might happen. It shouldn't always be as cut and dry as it is on the show, and you need that because that's a TV show. That's the way you put stories together. I kind of liked that they played with the fact that maybe there isn't one concrete answer here. Maybe every situation leads to branching possibilities that then they have to deal with. And it's very tough to find your way forward. I can understand where it's frustrating as a reader, where you're just saying, where are they going with this? But as I said, considering that Ashley spends a lot of her time spinning her wheels, I think she at least played it up to good effect here. And she expanded on the core premise of Quantum Leap in an interesting way. Let me read. I have it here in my notes. This is when they're talking about World War III. And now what? Ziggy says you have to keep Missy's father from losing some papers. We can't tell. Maybe he leaves them behind. Where is Ziggy getting all of this? From data in a timeline that doesn't exist?
Well, they get into that a little bit. They're talking about the project exists outside of time in some way.
Yes. And I wanted to talk to you guys about that.
Like, they're in some sort of limbo until World War III can be prevented.
I'm so intrigued and confused by all of that.
I guess, it's like there must be some sort of, like, time bubble or something, like, that gives them time whenever Sam changes something that could potentially lead to a bad situation in the future, because how else are they going to solve this? So it's interesting.
Yeah. Thinking about episodes like Elite for Lisa, that would have been handy if Al hadn't immediately popped out of the timeline. It would have unfortunately meant we'd have lost Roddy McDowall's performance, but I think there's times in the show where that would have been beneficial.
Maybe the time hit the odds going down, though, when Al is counting down to when he disappears. Maybe that's the bubble shrinking and disappearing, because that's
the sliver of reality, because as long as there's a 1% chance, there's still a chance.
Because otherwise, as soon as Sam did the thing that triggered him dying, he would have just blinked out of existence. But there was time for that to build up.
Yeah, okay. No, fair enough. I can go with that.
So this is how Ashley writes it, and I really feel like I wrote a little something similar in Foreknowledge many years later without realizing I was copying it from her. You guys can judge me on that when we get to my book. But she writes, the project existed in the moment of time in which it could exist, a slice which, at the moment, was exceedingly narrow. Those really drastic changes in the time stream which threatened the very existence of the project slipped it sideways until things settled down again. So far, things had always settled down. No one wanted to think about the consequences if they didn't. Meanwhile, the continuum of sideways outside the perimeters of the project was chaos. Now, I'm trying to figure out what she means by that. I guess
it's World War III going on outside of their little bubble, and they're sitting there in the cafeteria like, oh, that'd suck. Don't go out there.
It's very poetic. It's a really nice piece.
Her saying that they slipped sideways, I guess, is her way of saying that's how they slip, quote, out of time. But then she's saying that outside the perimeters of the project is chaos. So does that mean if you go outside while Sam is on a leap, that there is no reality, that they're just existing in some weird time bubble and that contradicts everything that we've ever seen, because Leon can get out and there's a world there. Tina leaves in the first book. Al leaves in the second book. I'm trying to figure out what the hell she means by this.
And I think there's a couple of novels that reference Al's ability specifically to kind of see multiple timelines, which is the same sort of concept, I guess, but on a much more local level.
I do think they do some interesting stuff with the timeline there. I don't think they're trying to say that whenever Sam leaps, they can just never leave the project. I think that they're saying in this particular one, because World War III is apparently going on, that would be just chaos out there, right? Like it's World War III outside of their project.
Literal chaos, not some kind of temporal chaos.
Yeah, I think that's what they were getting at, what Ashley McConnell was getting at. But
I took it as temporal chaos. I didn't think that World War III actually came to pass and that Sam was preventing it.
I think that was the new timeline coming in at them. But I thought like the way that maybe they're just used to this at this point, but it feels like this is bigger stakes than normal. World War III, they've certainly had things that happen on leaps that were pretty serious, but like World War III would be a big deal. And yet Al is sitting there in the cafeteria with Verbena shooting the shit about whatever. Like, yeah, I guess out there is World War III. I guess we got to stick around in here for a while. And it's like, talk to Sam. Do something. Like, why aren't you urgent about this? And then like, oh no, Sam's not under more stress than normal. He's being beaten and World War III is at stake. And whatever. Sloppy Joe Day.
What's the point of urgency? Think fourth dimensionally. There's no sense of urgency when you're going back in time to prevent something from happening in the first place.
I just want to back up, though, and you're right about that, Matt. But I don't think that World War III ever broke out within the covers of this this novel. Like, I think that it was a possibility that they brought up, and Sam was supposed to prevent it, and they even had circular arguments about, well, it never happened to begin with, so why would I need to prevent it? Blah, blah, blah. But I never got the impression that, you know, the bombs were flying, and they were now living in a World War III reality.
But then that very poetic piece is lovely, but totally inconsistent with everything in every other novel and TV episode.
Yeah, so I was just thinking, is it chaos? Like, I just don't know. I'm trying to, like, parse. It was very metaphorical, and I'm just trying to, like, place it into the quantum leap universe that we know, and I'm having a hard time.
It's the tie-in paradox. It's good writing that's inconsistent with the rest of the series, and is it a problem if it makes a novel good? And if it's a good bit, is that an issue? When it's just, and the only problem is that it's meant to be inspired by a TV show, but it's doing something different. I don't have the answer to that. I think there's good arguments either way.
Yeah, it's fair to speculate, and it's the kind of speculation that I personally enjoy, and that's why, I mean, I wanted to bring it up with you guys just to see if you had any more firm grasp on what she might have intended there than I was able to come away with, and I think the answer is no. But it's still an interesting thought experiment.
I mean, my takeaway was it was World War III. I think it was literal chaos, and until they changed the timeline back or fixed the leap or whatever, then they were just kind of stuck there for a little bit in their own little safe time bubble. That was my interpretation anyway.
All right. I guess that's fair. I think that doesn't make sense to me because Al...
what do you think it was?
I don't know what it was. That's why I'm asking you guys. I'm not. I respect that that's your interpretation. I just don't happen to agree with it because then it becomes a completely different book. Anyway. I think it's an interesting sort of musing that they do, and they do have some good lines in here about, maybe Sam being the architect of his own leaping, which foreshadows the end of the series.
Yeah, they say a lot of stuff about that. Like, he wonders if he leaped in to change his own past, or if he's creating his own timeline by leaping to ensure he creates the project. All sorts of, like, threads there.
Yeah, and I did like that. But what do you guys think about the conceit that she pretty much cements in here? I mean, she alludes to it earlier in the novels, how Al goes to Sam's office and small things have changed. But now, every time Al comes out of the imaging chamber, he's got to confer with Ziggy about what has changed around him in the minutes that he's with Sam. In this case, I guess the most blatant example is that first he's dating Tina, and then in this version of reality that you're returning to, Tina's married to Gushy.
I felt so bad for him there. He's like, she's married to Gushy, so he's got to wait it out till they're not married anymore.
But what do you guys think about that? Because I have problems with that. Because how can the project exist in any kind of cohesive fashion if its very own sort of foundations are always shifting?
I mean, I don't think the core of it shifts. Unless something's really gone wrong. It's just little things that change in the timeline. I don't really know how whatever Sam does makes Gushy and Tina get married. Or I don't know why it always changes something at the project.
Butterfly effect in it.
Yeah. But it adds another layer of tragedy to Al. We talked about this before, the fact that he remembers all the timelines, that he's got this sort of private burden to deal with. Although in this book, it says that he told Verbena about it. She's the only one that he told about this, about remembering other timelines.
Right, and she doesn't want to dwell on it any more than she has to, because she's saying, what if there's an existence where I don't have a sister or something like that?
Yeah, but Al's talking to the project psychiatrist about that. He's got some stuff to deal with. Huh? Especially someone who's so resistant to therapy and stuff.
Yeah.
He's got some things.
See, I can't see any reason why the timeline would be somehow protected at the project. I find it all technically seems very possible, in fact likely, but I just find it dramatically unsatisfying knowing that all these characters that we're occasionally picking up with through the show once every season or so, and in most of the novels, that their timelines are just in flux and changing, and none of them remember any of this. They're just suddenly married to each other or having affairs with each other or whatever. It stops me from caring about the characters so much, knowing that, all right, in the next novel they might be having entirely different relationships and no one knows or cares.
Yeah. That's kind of an issue with time travel stuff in general, isn't it? When they that always bothers me in stuff when it's a time travel property and they change something so drastically,
Yeah.
It's well, then what did we spend all this time for? You don't like undoing character development.
I just want, just a line in there somewhere saying that, yeah, there's some kind of bubble protecting the project so that everything outside the project changes, but within the project, nothing changes. It doesn't make any sense. Technobabble, whatever, but it does mean that the relationship with Tina that, Al spends the entire of Dr. Ruth building the relationship with Tina, and yeah, that could just go.
Yeah, I would have liked to see some of their relationship where it isn't just Al trying to get her to come back.
Yeah.
Maybe we could see what their relationship's like and not just Tina, come back to the project.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is one of the conceits of the novels that I think other authors pick up on and play with that I just never bought. I just don't like that as a premise, as a concept. I think it's ridiculous that Sam doing one thing will change things specifically back at Project Quantum Leap. Why? It's just to have fun with the narrative, It's just because.
I think there's only two reasons it should happen. One, to explain inconsistencies that you're like, whoops, whoopsie doodle. Yeah. And two, when it's interesting. Just do it when it's interesting. You don't need constantly to be like, oh, this has changed or this is that or whatever. And especially because if it changes every time, Al would just go insane.
Yeah.
He was the only one who would remember all this stuff. Sometimes it's a little too tragic.
And I know I said the butterfly effect seems incredibly likely, but actually, the more I think about that, in the world of Quantum Leap, it starts to become more and more problematic because you start picking at things and saying, well, maybe the events of What Price Gloria means we have a different president in the 90s.
Right.
Because. And, the entire world is just changing around them because Sam made it rain in the middle of a drought. And, that somehow has meant war broke out somewhere else.
And that's just Sam. What about if you factor in the evil leapers? And if any leaper just doing anything, it is chaos. It's temporal chaos.
Yeah. All right. So we can't have the butterfly effect in Quantum Leap. So therefore, what is Sam doing specifically that's screwing up Tina's relationship with Al?
Right.
What did he do while he was missing?
And basically, then at this point, Al is just surfing a multiverse.
Yeah.
At one point, Sam theorizes that in another timeline, he leaps in his body to try and explain this inconsistency. But then it's how did that happen? How would that happen?
We'll always have this argument about the mind-body thing. I think it's in flux.
I've got a theory on this, and it's working so far. All of the novel, and I don't know, I have to check through all the novels to make sure this is the case, but all of the novels that reference it being a body swap are all set after Trilogy Part 3. And Trilogy Part 3 is where we discover that Sammy Jo is now at the project with her own way of trying to get Sam back. And in her attempts to get Sam back, she does something that screws up the way that leaping works. And so the entire physics of leaping change for the second half of season 5, which includes Dr. Ruth, which is the one where the Leapy suddenly needs a pair of glasses. And it includes Mirror Image, where the fact that the waiting room is empty is apparently a weird thing, which it shouldn't be. So it fixes some issues with the second half of season 5.
Wait, you're saying that's when the body leaps start or the mind leaps?
The mind leaps. The body swaps. The mind leaps.
Oh, the mind leaps start then. Okay.
The Chris leaps. The novel leaps.
Yeah, right. Sure.
So all of this happens after Sammy Jo starts messing around with things. It's all Sammy Jo's fault that now it's Sam's mind leaping because she's able to get his body back into the waiting room. That's her, half attempt at getting him home. She gets the body back, but the mind stays out there. So the entire second half of season 5 and most of the novels, all set post-Trilogy 3, all have mind leaps. Body leaps. Oh my god. Mind leaps.
Mind leaps.
Stop talking now.
You say mind leaps.
I told you it's an in-progress theory. It's an in-progress thought as well, apparently. This is, as we read through the novels, I need to check if this holds up, because I know most of the novels are probably set during season 5, but they need to be set after Trilogy 3 for this to work for me.
Well, this was set after Trilogy.
Yeah.
And no Sammy Jo anywhere in sight at the project. No Donna.
No.
Well, yeah, I guess it still was after Trilogy. It was after Trilogy and before Blood Moon, because he says he never leaped to Europe.
Exactly.
Or maybe he wanted to forget that one.
Who can blame him?
He Swiss cheesed it. He's like,
We're sorry, Tommy. We love you.
They did have an interesting line where Sam remembers Tom dying and not.
Yes.
He remembers both.
Yeah.
He's not sure if the things he changes stay changed. So this seems kind of different because in Leap for Lisa, it seemed like Sam did not remember the other timelines because he was starting to forget Al.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's interesting. I think that, again, I think when you're writing and trying to get into a character's head, a lot of the musing that you do is just you coming up with shit for them to think about. And I've been in this situation, so it's just like, what would be an interesting thing for Sam to think about in this instance? And the fact that, he remembers that Tom died, but then he remembers being the best man at his wedding. Which one is right? Well, I think he would remember both, because if you think about it, he's been leaping since before and after Tom's, quote, 2 realities. So he's never really been able to settle down into one time or the other. I still think his mind would be in flux as well.
So he exists outside of any timeline?
Yeah. To an extent, I think that him remembering both timelines is just fine. And the fact that he was forgetting Al in that one episode maybe contradicts that, but I think that would be the anomaly. I think that he would tend to remember both.
I always kind of thought of it like he remembered the leap saving Tom. So he remembered that Tom died at some point because that's why he was there. But then his mind sort of adjusted to the new timeline and he kind of had to sort through that. Like his brother was dead, now he's not.
But if you think about it in the books, if Al can remember both timelines and Ziggy can remember both timelines, Sam is the third part of that triumvirate. He should be able to remember both timelines as well.
But that's how it works in the show, too. Like, Al seems to remember and then Sam doesn't. So that's kind of interesting. I always thought it was something to do with how Al was connected to Ziggy that was different than Sam. Something to do with him being the observer.
Well, that's interesting. You should write a short story about that.
There's even a line where Al wonders if Ziggy can read their minds because their chips are made from their nerve tissue. So I don't know. Maybe that has something to do with.
Yeah, but then I'm thinking if it's such an amalgam, I think that Sam would have sort of the same experience. That's all. But that's open to interpretation.
Yeah.
And if you found things in the show that back up your interpretation, to me, that's very interesting because that's not the way I ever thought about it. So it's cool.
Yeah, I just think because it seems inconsistent that I don't know, maybe Al had to be connected in some different way to be observer. And that's why he seems to be the one that remembers.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, so I mean, a lot of interesting time travel stuff in this, and I think more interesting than it's been played up in the previous books, at least a little bit more compelling, where I think in the previous books it was just confusing. It was maybe sometimes even contradictory.
It's almost like she's starting to think about her next novel. How does all this work? Somebody should write a book about all that.
I wrote down a bunch of this stuff, and all of it feels like there's these threads that are kind of picked up and then not taken anywhere, probably in the next book. Just interesting thoughts that just are, like, by themselves. Like, there's one part where Sam is wondering... where he's talking about, like, what did he do to create this project? And he's like, well, maybe I programmed Ziggy to lead me into these situations, and this fate is all because of it's my own design. And it says the most dreadful possibility is that he's changing time to his liking. He's like, what if I was just like, what if I did this for some sinister reason? I'm trying to change time. He had some plan.
Yeah, there's definitely what feels like some build up to Prelude going on.
But also, just as we discussed in Starcrossed, his prime directive, so to speak, was that time travel shall not change things to his benefit.
That's true. He had that rule to stop himself.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's something that's always been on his mind canonically. So it's another interesting way to think about it. And the only thing that makes me say maybe not is that we do get a couple of instances where he's between leaps, and there's obviously some kind of higher presence judging him and telling him you can't go home yet. So unless that's somehow him doing it to himself, then it seems that whatever Sam's intent, he's now sort of working at the behest of somebody else. He's part of somebody else's agenda.
It's future Sam. He leaped so long. He became just this entity, this cosmic entity.
Right.
Isn't that the plot of Enterprise?
Exactly. I was just thinking he's future guy in Enterprise. And that was always the intent. They never really revealed who future guy was, but they always said it was going to be Archer. So, which would have been just total bullshit. But anyway, I guess they could have done it.
Oh, you're not going to like the new Quantum Leap series then? Oh, sorry. Did I say that out loud?
Boy.
Archer is future guy in it?
Yeah. Yes.
I hope they get into the evil leapers and then they're like, who's running everything? And then Sam comes out, dun dun dun.
But it turns out it's not Sam, it's actually Captain Archer.
Yeah, right. It's Archer the whole time.
We got Scott back. He's not Sam.
Just go completely insane, new Quantum Leap.
Well, guys, I don't think I have much more to say about the wall.
I have more.
What do you got? What do you got?
Go on.
I have a bunch of stuff. Okay. Sam asks if success has nothing to do with leaping. What's the point of leaping at all?
Yeah, fair point.
Which is a point that we brought up. Also to do with the timey-wimey stuff. Al says that he used to be in the Navy and he was an admiral. He doesn't say he is an admiral. He says that he was.
I didn't spot that.
So is he not an admiral in this timeline?
Maybe was an admiral active duty, but he's retired now. I mean, he is still Admiral Calavici.
But they always refer to him as an admiral. Do you just keep the title, I guess?
I think you do. Just like they call ex-presidents president.
I guess, yeah.
But then that would be a slip that he should be saying he is an admiral.
Yeah, because he's still seems to be doing active stuff in the show.
Yeah.
As an admiral.
So probably just a slip. They
say that Ziggy is, I guess they mean the project, buried under acres of lava and caliche. Is that how you pronounce it? Lava? Are they in a volcano?
No, I think that they meant some kind of lava rock. Molten lava turns into rock. I don't know why they would say lava unless they meant obsidian or something like that. Or got me.
I read that as lava.
Do they think in New Mexico there's a volcano somewhere? I didn't understand that.
Anybody out there who's a geologist, please contact us and clarify that line for us because we don't know what the hell's going on.
Oh, yeah. I just Googled. I didn't know that the term lava is also used for solidified rock formed by the cooling of molten lava flow. I thought lava was always liquid.
Is there lava rock in New Mexico?
Well, yeah, all right. That That's besides the point. Shush.
Like, that would mean that there was a volcano and lava there at some point.
Yeah, that was created by the timeline that Sam created in Jimmy. By saving Jimmy, a volcano was created there. Butterfly effect.
I'm going to look it up. New Mexico volcano. There are no active volcanoes in New Mexico, but there's extinct volcanoes.
So there you go.
So that's how we can determine where Stallion's Gate... We just look up where the volcanoes are.
All right, cool. I like that.
The glowing blue mountain it used to be a volcano. I like this.
And that's why there's such an extensive cave system under there, because the lava had to come up from somewhere, right?
This is good stuff.
And it's not like it dried in place. It shot all out and just left tunnels behind. There.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you.
This is good.
Next one, Allison. What do you got? Let's solve the next one.
Okay. Sam says, oh, nuts, instead of oh, boy. Oh, nuts. Which is kind of a very adorable way to start this very, very heavy leap.
Yeah, and then he gets punched for it. So,
He gets punched for saying, oh, nuts.
Yeah.
Man.
Should have stuck to oh, boy.
Okay, this seemed out of character to me. Al attends the mass alongside Sam. Is this just that Catholic guilt coming in?
Because he could show him what to do, I guess?
Yeah, but he's attending it with him. He's not just showing him what to do. They make a point of saying he's actually attending the mass. He's wearing like a suit.
Yeah,
and everything.
Well, didn't he sort of get over that in Leap of Faith? Was it Leap of Faith? He sort of came to peace with it.
Yeah, I think he's had a very complicated relationship with God. I don't think he's going back to church or anything, but maybe that is kind of that Catholic guilt.
Yeah, it could be.
Know?
Or maybe he's just like, oh, Sam needs me to do this. I can do it. I've had my epiphany about this part of my life way back in the middle of season 3 or the beginning of season 3, and now we can see that I've grown in this area.
I don't know. I just didn't see him as like a church going guy, you know?
No, but the thing is, he doesn't refuse to go into churches anymore, and he knows the mass, obviously, so he just went in there to help Sam out, and if he's going to be going to mass, he's going to be going respectfully.
Yeah, I guess.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I did like, that made me laugh, though, that scene, because he writes the mass would be in Latin. He could handle Latin, like Sam speaks Latin. And he's talking about, like, translating, what he said was... It was Caligula or something like that he was translating. So that made me chuckle. He could handle
What
that.
a nerd. You know what he also speaks in this book? Russian.
Yeah.
They say that he can speak Russian, but he didn't in Lee Harvey Oswald. It was weird that he could speak Russian because he didn't normally know it.
Do you think he picked that up from Lee? Maybe he retained it.
Yeah, maybe he just kept it.
Yeah.
He learned Russian from Lee Harvey
Sure.
Oswald. I guess. I never thought about him just retaining a skill like that, but that's an interesting possibility.
Wow, so many opportunities for stuff to just be picked up through the show.
Yeah, he's like that girl on Heroes that could like mimic whatever she sees on the TV and suddenly she can do it. Picking up wrestling moves and stuff.
Well, he was especially psychosynergized with Oswald, so that's my headcanon.
Yeah, well, I mean, you would hope he didn't retain too much from him, but...
He does mention it in this book, obliquely. Something with a rifle.
Right.
Having leapt twice. This is when he leaps into the adult Missy.
There was also a Captain Planet reference.
Yes!
Had to have been in there because Dean Stockwell did Duke Nukem.
I don't know what you're talking about.
That was the name of the character, right? It's also Duke Nukem?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a character on Captain Planet called Duke Nukem. He likes to pollute, and Dean Stockwell did the voice for him originally.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Okay, I have a couple more things and then I'm done. So when Sam leaps into the adult Missy, Al asks him how it feels to cross his arms over breasts.
Yeah.
He's like, isn't that weird?
It is weird, and this is the biggest problem I had with Al in this book. I mean, he is the biggest misogynist, and but it's not even like in the cute, charming Al way. He's just an asshole. I mean, he's saying nothing worse than a drunk woman, something like that. Nothing worse than a drunk woman. He's a drunk. But there's nothing worse than a drunk woman.
Yeah.
He condescends to Verbena.
That seems like something he'd do, though. Kind of hypocritical at times. But you gotta throw some charm on it. You know, I feel like that she didn't really get the, like...
But in this one, all he's doing is, like, looking through keyholes into bedrooms. He's musing about, that's my job, not your job, Sam. And then he sticks his head in while the mom and the dad are having sex.
Yeah, there's a time to be horny, Al, and it's not when Sam's being viciously beaten, I think.
Exactly.
There's a balance between horny Al and concerned Al. And then Sam's like, you can't watch me get undressed.
It's like, you're just plain unlikable, Al. So, yeah. Oof.
Okay, the last thing that I had written, before each leap-in, when Sam leaps into young Missy and adult Missy, he thinks the exact same paragraph.
Yes, I did notice that.
As if he Swiss cheesed the thought, and I thought that was really, really clever. I liked that.
I think that that was an effective mirroring of him coming in. I just hope that she doesn't do it for every leap-in from now on.
I don't think so. I think it's just...
It'll be her version of a time-traveling Lone Ranger who doesn't even need the mask.
Right? I do recall her copying and pasting some of her own stuff into flashbacks in Prelude, I guess.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what I thought anyway. I remembered one book copying and pasting old scenes. Am I wrong? Do you remember this, Matt?
I don't, but... It doesn't surprise me.
We'll have to keep an eye out for
We'll find it when we get to it.
Yeah, Prelude's next.
Yeah, I remembered that happening. I really liked that because it's got to be so frustrating for Sam not knowing the things that you don't remember. So even like your private thoughts, you could have thought these a million times over, and he's thinking the same thing.
And he wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did anyone else find it disquieting that instead of doctor, everybody at the project is calling Sam director? When their director gets back. I guess they gave him a title in this one that he didn't have before, but I never think of Sam as like his administrative role. I don't know. It just struck me as weird because I don't think I've seen it anywhere before.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of used to like reading fanfics and from the other novels that just sort of became a thing, like interchangeable. He's the director. He's also Dr. Beckett. You know, I guess like at the project, I mean, he is still the director, though I don't really know why. He's not running anything anymore, but I guess he wasn't deposed or anything.
Yeah, I mean, we had sort of a similar discussion in Starcross, too, and it's just like, you know, he's non-compos mentis. Well, he's not even there. So, what's the sense, you know? Who cares if they take him out of his position? It's really a moot point at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, like, it was always kind of like Al or someone else was in charge in his absence anyway. I kind of took it as Al was in charge.
Yeah.
Maybe Donna in some timeline.
Not this timeline. She doesn't exist, apparently.
No, she and Sammy Joe, not there.
Not there.
The project seems very small because it's just Al and Verbena and like Gushy gets a mention and Tina, one scene, she might have been there with Gushy and like, you know, they were hanging out being married or something and then Al's depressed about it.
Look at them over there being married and everything.
Do you like him kind of being jealous, picking at a burrito or whatever he's doing? Yeah, there's stuff that I liked bits and pieces in this book, but overall, it just made me mad and I didn't enjoy reading this. I'm sorry for being overly negative here, but I couldn't with this.
It's okay. I found it a tough read, but not in that it made me angry, just that it was just, a little depressing and heavy and, not one that I immediately want to go back to.
All right. I think that those are very fair final thoughts. It's a fair assessment of the book. And, you know, you don't have to like every single thing that comes out that has the word quantum leap on it. And if this doesn't speak to you or you find it just is completely contradictory to the show that you know and love, that's an equally valid interpretation in my opinion. Again, I just was surprised at how much I enjoyed it compared to my initial reaction when I read it decades ago. So maybe for me, that helped me get over some of the more negative aspects of the book, but
low expectations.
I guess, but on the whole, I would say of the novel run so far, I think that this is the strongest.
All right. It's an interesting wrong opinion. Oh man, it's fine. If it spoke to you, that's fine. Again, I want to reiterate, I don't have anything against Ashley McConnell. I enjoyed the first book, and I enjoyed bits of the second book as well. I remember liking Prelude, even though Prelude had some stuff I had some issues with, but I don't really have an issue with her as an author. I really found this one a miss.
All right. Well, I think that does it for our conversation about The Wall. And guys, let's move on to some happier topics. Instead of Sam being beat up, why don't we talk about the fact that we got some new patrons?
Oh, yay!
Yay! We have 3 new patrons to announce. Ooh. So everybody give it up for, first, Jamie Bradbury. Jamie joins us at the $10 oh boy level. Woo, Jamie!
Yay! Thank you, Jamie.
We also have a new producer patron. His name is Joshua Berwald. Joshua, thanks for coming through, buddy. Great to have you aboard.
Yay!
And last but not least, we also have a new $5 Leaper patron, Mr. Adam Ridgewell. So thank you, Adam, once again.
Hey, thanks, Adam.
So we got this last month, I guess people are excited about the reboot. Maybe they're finding us, they're finding the podcast, and we're getting members at every level. It's great. So we also got a letter from Joshua, who is our new producer. I'm sorry, Mr. Producer, sir. We're going to read your letter now.
If that's okay.
If you don't mind. Joshua writes, oh boy, sorry, couldn't resist. Hiya, friends. My name is Joshua, and I'm so happy to be back on the QL bandwagon. I think he means the QLP bandwagon, but I'm so happy to be back on the QL bandwagon. I have been listening to the show off and on for a few months, but when the announcement was made, I finally talked my wife into watching the show with me because, quote, I'm going to make you watch the new show anyhow.
She is, of course, loving the show. So imagine how excited I was when I saw y'all were revisiting the series and the novels just as I was doing the same. I enjoyed the show's early days, but the humor y'all current hosts bring to it is great. I function only because of access to snark and coffee. Thanks, Joshua.
Snark and Coffee is my college band.
Congratulations for getting your wife to watch the show. I've been, my other half has seen episodes here and there, but will not marathon the series with me. And I have said the same thing to her, that you will be watching the new series with me. It's like, okay.
I love you wrote, like, the definitive book about Quantum Leap, and your wife is like, eh.
It's okay.
I'll pass on this one, buddy.
Yeah. She had to spend like a year and a half constantly hearing the theme tune playing as I played the same episodes over and over again.
She's trying to sleep.
I tried, actually, while I was making dinner earlier on, I put the soundtrack on just to kind of, I don't know, just subtly, have some kind of influence over her. And we got onto track 2 and she was like, is that Scott Bakula singing? Why, yes, it is. Yes,
and
yes, it is.
And
if you stick around longer,
you're like, no.
Dean Stockwell, bust some rhymes.
Look away. Don't be nobody's gangsta fool, Sharon.
But yeah, Joshua succeeded where I have so far failed.
And Joshua, yeah, I couldn't imagine. I mean, most every other show that I watch, my wife just like kind of sniffs and turns her head and walks away. Like, what is this garbage? But she actually genuinely enjoys Quantum Leap. So I'm lucky in that regard. And she's looking forward to the reboot as well. So thank you for writing, Joshua. I'm sorry, Mr. Producer, sir. And as a perk for your producer patronage, you will, of course, be mentioned in the closing credits of the show as we go forward. Jamie, I will be contacting you for your Oh Boy interview sometime in the next 12 to 15 months because there's a lot of people waiting. And Adam, you will get all access to the exclusive content that we have on the Patreon site, and I've already sent the bookmarks out to all 3 of these new patrons because they, of course, are part of the QLP Book Club now. So enjoy those bookmarks. Go up, buy the novels. We're just getting started. So thank you all for being patrons of our show. We couldn't do it without you. Guys, I got a blast from the past here. We got a letter from a longtime listener who we haven't heard from in quite a while, but been listening to the show longer than I have, that's for sure. It's Father Beast.
Father Beast.
Father Beast.
How you doing, Father Beast?
Welcome back, Father Beast.
I think the last time we heard from Father Beast, I believe he won the Blu-rays.
Whoa!
I guess he decided to chime in because we've gotten to the novels, and the title of the email that he sent was "My Problem with the Ashley McConnell Books."
Get some hot takes.
Okay, we know where this is going then.
Matt, why don't you start?
Sure. Hello, Quantum Leap Podcast. This is Father Beast. To explain the problem I have with the Quantum Leap novels by Ashley McConnell, just go straight there. I love that. To explain the problem I have with the Quantum Leap novels by Ashley McConnell, I have to bring up the Star Trek novels. In the Star Trek Extended Universe, it's sort of understood that only the television shows and movies are actually canon, and the novels are less so. So occasionally, a Star Trek novel will say something that has not been established in the show, and there will be something in the TV show later on which says that what the novel says is wrong.
For example, there was a Star Trek The Next Generation novel called Imzadi, in which it stated that William T. Riker's middle name is Thelonious. Later on, the TV episode Second Chances said that Riker's middle name is Thomas. This is sort of a tradition where a novel takes a stab at something and the TV show says, no, it's actually this way.
Now, when I read a Quantum Leap novel by Ashley McConnell, it is full of things that were already established in the show, and then she says, no, it's actually this way. For some reason, I tend to think that the TV show has priority when establishing things that are canon in the show. So I tend to think that one of her novels is just fan fiction, which doesn't care about the canon of the show. But that's just my feelings. Father Beast.
Laying down the smack.
No, I mean, I get it. Like, I mean, we've talked about this sort of stuff before, and especially in Prelude, there's some real departures, which you have to just say, like, well, actually, it's this way, because it's talking about before the pilot and then leading into the pilot of the show. So, I get it. But I can enjoy fan fictions, like, really the novels are just published fan fiction, because they're fans and they're writing fiction about the show. But I can enjoy it if it's well done, even if it's not exactly canon. Like, I don't really subscribe or ascribe or whatever you want, whatever the word is, to the mind leap theory. But some of the novels I do think did it interestingly.
Yeah, and I think that Ashley has her own take on the Quantum Leap universe, which is significantly different than a lot of the other novels. I think the other novels try to jive more closely with the TV show. And I feel like because as the novels went on, you were getting access to more fanfic writers and more, genuine, like dyed-in-the-wool Quantum Leap fans that wanted to do nothing but write a Quantum Leap novel to expand upon the TV universe. Where I think Ashley seems to be approaching it a little bit more independently.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know anything about Ashley McConnell? She was a fan of the show, right? Like, I mean, obviously she wrote the books, but was she hired on as a fan, or was she hired on?
No, Ginger approached her because she had written some fantasy stuff before, and I think that Ginger knew that she was a fan of QL, so she said, why don't you pitch me some ideas so we can get the novel program off the ground? And she pitched ones that Ginger liked, but I feel like, and this could be apocryphal, I just feel like Ginger's saying that there were certain things that Ashley wrote that had not yet been established on the show, and that's why some of her stuff is different. But in hindsight, when we look at the timing of the release of the books and when she had to be writing them, and it seems like maybe a lot of the stuff was established on the show, but she just went in a different direction. I don't know that it makes much difference, because to me, the novels aren't canon anyway, so they can be as different as they want to be. I know, Matt, you have a different take on that.
Yeah. My take is it's all canon, and if there's any inconsistencies, it's up to the fans to jump through hoops to figure that out. And I will gladly do that.
So Sam's middle name is Thelonious and Thomas, is that what you're saying?
Definitely. Sam Thelonious Thomas Beckett. Yeah, for sure. And I never thought that Ashley was, because I think in Father Beast's email, it's sort of, I don't know if this is the wrong take, but it seems to be that he's saying that Ashley has decided, I'm going to go in a different way. And it sounds more to me, especially from what Chris just said, that maybe it's that she's not that much of a dyed-in-the-wool QL fan, and she just maybe didn't get that part of it, and went ahead with the leaps in the way that she thought was genuinely canon.
She does, mention several episodes in this, so I think, she was at least enough of a fan that she was trying to keep track of stuff. But especially back then, I mean, it's hard to keep track of every little bit of canon, so there's certain things where it's I get it, it doesn't have to be perfectly in sync with what the canon is. I think really the only time it felt like she's like, no, I'm just going to do it whatever way I want to do it is the ending of Prelude.
Yes.
Which, that's the one that really I'm like, why though?
That's the only thing that when you're doing a prequel that leads into something else, you kind of got to make them link up at the end. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. But
yeah, well, I think maybe that's what Father Beast is thinking about here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it probably is. I didn't think that Prelude needed to spend so much time on Jar Jar Binks at Senate meetings and all that. I really feel like they lost track of what the prequels really should be about.
Well, yeah, let's save that discussion for when we actually are talking about Prelude.
Yeah, we'll get into the Jar Jar stuff later.
I don't even know what you mean, so I can't wait to read it now. I'm going to be looking for Misa.
I'm joking about the Star Wars prequels. I got
understand.
No response. No one got my joke.
No. I'm right there. I'm now imagining Prelude starting with a Star Wars crawl saying, like, it was a time of politics and trade disputes. And
I hate sand. It's so sandy out. I killed younglings. I killed them all.
They had it coming.
Oh, I can't wait to talk about Prelude. Can we do that next weekend, guys? Sorry.
Oh my god, I can't read Prelude in 1 week.
I can read it in a day. I love it. Anyway.
You reader, you.
It's interesting to me that Father Beast is bringing up something that's actually now happening in the Star Trek universe. They're lifting a lot of stuff from the novels and making it canon.
Yeah.
Is it Thelonious now? Oh my god. If they changed William T. Riker's middle name, then all of the stuff with Thomas Riker, is he named Thelonious now? Like, we can't leave this hanging.
Spock doesn't need a first name.
Well, they just announced that Spock has a full name now, and they lifted that from a book called Ishmael. I believe it's by Barbara Hamley. Yeah. It's a book I read 10,000 years ago. Don't ask me how I remember her name. There are certain things that I remember specifically about that book. Spock having a full name isn't one of them, but that's a story for another day.
There's like one episode of the original series where they say he's got another name, but every other reference to Vulcans, they've just got one name. This has never come up that Vulcans have got two names, right?
And that to me makes absolutely no sense because there are only so many 5-letter S combinations that you can make. So
yes,
obviously there's got to be some other way.
You think like T'Pau is like there's another T'Pau, and it's like, which one are you going to be? I'm T'Pau 1. No, you going to be T'Pau 1? Maybe I want to be T'Pau 1. You can be other T'Pau.
True story. There was another Chris on my block when I was growing up, and in my house, he was the other Chris.
I'm sure at his house, he's like, oh yeah, that's the other Chris. You guys see each other on the street, like glare at each other. There's the other Chris over there.
We were actually friends. We played wiffle ball all the time. So.
Wiffle ball? That's not a thing.
It is a thing. Look it up.
Oh my God, Americans are weird.
Hey, Matt, I bet you never met another Matt in your life. That's such a rare name, Matt.
The other Matt.
When I was at school, there were 3 Matts in my class.
When you're a Matt, you know at least like 5 other Matts. And they're like, I don't know which Matt is which Matt. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have to say your podcast Matt whenever I'm talking about you. Because like, I have to establish which Matt I'm talking about.
I don't know any other Allisons or Chris's. But then I don't speak to that many people, so.
I don't know as many Chris's as you might think I would know, because Chris is a very common name. But I know very few. Anyway, this is a weird conversation we've gone down. Thank you, Father Beast.
Yeah, thanks, Father Beast.
Who will forever be known as Thelonious Beast.
That's right, Thelonious Beast.
Yeah, we gotta get Father Beast, write us back. Which middle name did you like best? Were you a Team Thelonious?
I think they did that because of Riker's jazz connection, right?
Is that a jazz thing?
Is that a
Thelonious Monk?
Oh, okay. Is that a jazz musician, I guess?
Yes, that's a jazz musician. So I'm on Team Thomas.
Hey, I see here. We have a 5-star Apple Podcast review.
People are reviewing us?
I recognize this name, too.
Swisher Girl 24.
Yeah, I recognize Swisher Girl 24. She contacted me on Twitter. Real nice.
Ooh. Oh, really?
Ah.
Then why don't you read this?
She sounds it.
Read this lovely review that we got.
All right. She writes, funny and informative. I really adore this podcast. I find myself laughing out loud all the time at their gentle ribbing of the show. They have super interesting facts about production and great interviews with guest stars and writers and even Scott Bakula himself. This is a must for any QL fan.
A must.
Thanks, Swisher Girl.
A
Yeah, thank
must.
you.
Did you hear that? A must.
A must.
Even Scott Bakula himself.
We spend more time gently ribbing each other rather than the show, but I'll take that.
I kind of ribbed the show.
Yeah.
You think Scott Bakula's listening to this and he's like, they're wrong about this novel? Let me tell you.
Yeah, he's like, this novel's great. Let me tell you about this novel, guys.
This is my favorite novel, guys.
Well, if you out there want to be like Swisher Girl or Father Beast or our new producer, Joshua, there are many ways that you can reach us here on the Quantum Leap Podcast. You can get us by phone at 707-847-6682. You can email us at quantumleappodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/quantumleappodcast. You can also hit us up on Twitter and Instagram at quantumleappod. You can now see us on YouTube at youtube.com/the Quantum Leap Podcast. And you can always go that extra mile like Jamie and Joshua and Adam and support us on Patreon at patreon.com/Quantum Leap Podcast. Just remember that we may use your response on an upcoming episode of the Quantum Leap Podcast. And this is usually where I say, speaking of upcoming episodes, Matt, tell us what's next. But I kind of messed up. But I can't. I forgot to put the poll up until about an hour before we started recording of what we're going to do next. But Matt, I think you can maybe start talking us up into Right Hand to God because it's already a runaway winner.
Is that the next one anyway?
Yeah, it's the next one anyway. So Matt, why don't you tell us what's next? Maybe, question mark, probably.
Well, maybe The Right Hand of God? I hadn't prepared an intro to The Right Hand of God because I thought, it could be anything. It could be anything.
You knew it was going to be Thou Shalt Not, but not yet.
Yeah, so I keep hoping.
Thou shalt not pick Thou Shalt Not. Watch, we go in order until we get to Thou Shalt Not, and then they don't pick it.
So, nuns and topless ladies and getting punched a lot. It's been weeks since I've seen that episode. It'll be good to check that out again.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I just want to see if Al is carrying a hand link.
Gonna open up an ice cream shop.
I thought it was a donut shop.
That was spot on.
A donut shop? It was probably donut shop.
Donut.
Anyway, until we see if there's another hand link, I have been Christopher DeFilippis.
I've been Allison Pregler.
And I've been Matt Dale.
And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Quantum Leap Podcast, hosted by Allison, Matt, and Chris, with voice talent and contributions from Hayden McQueenie and Zoe Dean. Visit us at quantumleappodcast.com. To support the show, please go to patreon.com/quantumleappodcast. The executive producer of the Quantum Leap Podcast is Albert Burge. Christopher DeFilippis and Hayden McQueenie are the co-executive producers. Special thanks to our producers, Morgan Felden, Charles Allen Gossard, and Joshua Burwald. The thoughts expressed on this podcast are those of the individual and do not necessarily represent those of the Quantum Leap Podcast, its partners, or affiliates. The Quantum Leap universe and all it contains is the property of Belisarius Productions and Universal Television. The Quantum Leap Podcast is not affiliated with Belisarius Productions or Universal Television, and no copyright infringement is intended. Please visit barrenspace.com for this and other amazing content. The Quantum Leap Podcast is a Barren Space production.